Good day, everyone. This is Ma'am Monilin P. Gregorio. I will be giving you a lecture on the different patterns of evolution. Um, we have here the learning objective. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to explain the different patterns of the evolution. It is said that natural selection is the process through which populations of living organisms adapt and change. And this natural selection can lead to speciation, wherein one species gives rise to a new and distinctly different species. It is one of the processes that drives evolution and helps to explain the diversity of life on Earth. Evolution is change in the characteristics of living things over time. This is described by Charles Darwin, wherein this process is also called what we call as natural selection. Evolution explains how living things are changing today and how modern living things have descended from ancient life forms that no longer exist on Earth. So for our lesson this day with regards to evolution, there are what we call as groups of species wherein they undergo what we call as various kinds of natural selection, and over time they may engage in several patterns of evolution. So we have the convergent, divergent, parallel, and what we call as evolution as the topics of our discussion for this day with this time with regards to the topic evolution and natural selection. So we have here what we call as the first one, which is the convergent evolution. So I will discuss to you how are these particular types had their meaning. So this is the process in which the species that are closely related to each other independently evolve similar kinds of traits. For example, we have the dragonflies, the hawks, the bats, and what we call as all of these three particular species had common among them is the presence of wings. So none of these organisms owes its wings to genes inherited from any of the others. Each kind of wing evolved independently, suggesting that the trait of flight is a useful one for the purpose of survival and reproduction. These independently evolved wings coming from those I had mentioned, the dragonflies, the hawks, and the bats, these wings are called what we call in biology as the analogous structure. So that's what we call as under the convergent evolution. The second one, after convergent evolution, is divergent evolution. This is the process in which a trait held by a common ancestor evolves in different variation over time. For divergent evolution, this usually occurs in the vertebrate limb. So we have here an example on the PowerPoint, the whale flippers, the frog forelimbs, and our own arms most likely evolved from what we call as the front flippers of an ancient jawless fish, because we have what we call common evolutionary origin. These examples like found in the whale flippers, the frog forelimbs, and our own arms, we call this one as homologous structures. So this falls under what we call as divergent evolution. An important consequence of divergent evolution is what we call as speciation. So the divergence of one species into two or more descendant species, we have what we call as a four major ways speciation can occur. So it could be one, allopatric speciation, second is peripatric, third is parapatric, and the fourth is sympatric speciation. So join me in the finding out what are these four major ways of speciation that can occur. So let's start with the first one, which is the allopatric speciation. This occurs when a population becomes separated into entirely isolated subpopulation. Once the separation occurs, natural selection and genetic drift operate on each subpopulation independently, producing different evolutionary outcomes. So meaning to say, we can consider the evolution as allopatric speciation if we have, for example, a group of fish which is considered as the original population. We will consider them undergoing allopatric speciation if there will be two particular results of the original fish. So in the illustration all together from the start, the color of the fishes are uniform. But after allopatric speciation, there are divisions for different colors of the species already. So the fishes now got what we call as the blue color and the red color in the illustration, telling us that an allopatric speciation or evolution had occurred. So that's how things are with regards to allopatric speciation. The next one is what we call as peripatric speciation. So second, under this natural selection, the speciation, you have the peripatric speciation. This is somewhat similar to allopatric speciation, but specifically occurs when a small subpopulation becomes isolated from a much larger majority. Because the isolated subpopulation is so small, divergence can happen relatively due to the founder effect. This founder effect, in which small populations are more sensitive to genetic drift and natural selection, acts on a small gene pool. So in the peripatric speciation, after some generation, the island, for example, there are two particular species that are living on an island. We call the first one as the island flies, and the other one is the mainland flies, mga what we call as langaw. The island flies become isolated from the mainland flies. So therefore, there is what we call as peripatric speciation that had occurred. So there is what we call as the presence of the founder effect. Next, after the peripatric speciation, we have also this one with regards to peripatric, another more information. When small groups of individuals break off from the larger group and form a new species, we call this also as peripatric speciation. An allopatric speciation, there is what we call physical barriers, making it impossible for members of the groups to interbreed with one another. Bale, the main difference between allopatric speciation and peripatric speciation is that in peripatric speciation, one group is much smaller than the other. And the unique characteristic of the smaller groups are passed on to future generations of the group, making those traits more common among that group and distinguishing it from the others. So we have here on the PowerPoint presentation, we have the original population, for example. And because of the geographic isolation, there will be an upcoming new species. And then speciation will occur. And after the speciation, a new individual will be the result of that from the original population. Okay, so that is still under peripatric. The third one is the parapatric speciation. This occurs when a small population remains within the habitat of an original population. but it enters a different niche. Effects of other than physical separation prevent interbreeding between the two separated population because one of the genetically isolated population is so small. However, the founder effect can still play a role in the speciation. For example, in a case nagtanim tayo ng palay, the portion ng palay plantation uncontaminated soil ang gamit. The other one is mine waste. So itong mine waste, which is the palay had growth tremendously. We call this mine waste as what we call as the founder effect area, and it is considered as the different niche already. Okay, so that is parapatric speciation. The next one, last, is the sympatric speciation. This is considered to be the rarest and most controversial form of speciation. It occurs with no forms of isolation, wala physical or otherwise between two populations. So example dito, yung tomatoes and yung beetle na to, they live together, sympatric lang, considered as walang physical barriers between the two of them. So next, with regards to the summary of this one, the allopatric, parapatric, and sympatric, and peripatric. So may geographical barrier ang allopatric. Ang sympatric naman may genetic polymorphism. Parapatric had partial spatial isolation, and the peripatric isolation of a population at the periphery. So we can consider also in the case of the gecko that this one, mga lizard na to, there is an original population at the start, then speciation occurs, may two new species na na-produce. So still an example of sympatric, what we call a sympatric speciation. Allopatric, same kanina, considered as occurs between group, pero separated lang siya from one parent group. Okay? Next is the third one, the parallel evolution after the divergent. Next, number 3 is parallel evolution. This occurs when different species start with similar ancestral origins, then evolve similar traits over time. This kind of thing happens because the two different species, though they don't necessarily share a common ancestor, experience similar kinds of environmental pressures and survive only by undergoing similar adaptation. So we have here the marsupials, including the Tylocosmilos, and then we have the placentals. Okay, you can see the picture later on the PowerPoint. Both of them, or both groups, are considered as coming from the common ancestor, wherein one of their traits is having a canine teeth. So that's number 3, which is parallel evolution. The last but not least, we have the co-evolution. This occurs when closely interacting species exert selective pressures on each other so that they evolve together in a kind of conversation of adaptation. So examples of co-evolutions are common among predator-prey and host-parasite pairs. More pictures of this example are in the case of hummingbirds and the flowers from which they seek nectar and unwittingly pollinate. So there is what we call as co-evolution in the butterflies and birds. The bird feeds on the mimic type of butterfly. Tapos, yung another type of butterfly, which is monarch, inedible to siya sa birds. Kaya, para magkaroon ng co-evolution, the mimic increases chance that monarch will accidentally be eaten by the birds because the mimic is considered as to be the one that is fed to the butterflies. Pero yung monarch, hindi makain. So, para mag-evolve, yung evolves to look like less the mimic itong ating mga monarch. Tapos naman, yung isa naman, evolves to look more like the inedible monarch para lahat sila safe at hindi makain ng bird. So that's what we call as evolution. Nag-exert sila ng kanilang mga different features in such a way na malinlang nila ang bird at hindi sila ma-consume ng bird. Okay? So, these are the things that considered as part of our discussion with regards to evolution and speciation. If you have some questions, you can write in the comment section, or you can PM me for more information. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless, and mabuhay ang Pilipinas at mabuhay ang Tacorong National High School.